The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the grand ballroom, sending crystal shards across Marcus Wellington's Italian leather shoes. 200 of Chicago's elite turned in perfect synchronization, their conversations dying mid-sentence as the blonde woman in the $1,000 gown pointed an accusatory finger at the man who was supposed to marry her daughter in 3 days. "You want to know what kind of man your precious Marcus really is?" Victoria Ashford's voice carried across the charity gala like a battle cry. Her perfectly manicured hand trembled as she reached into her Hermes clutch, pulling out a manila envelope that seemed to weigh more than the room's collective net worth. "He's been stealing from children's charities for months." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as every camera phone in the room swiveled toward him. The annual Children's Hospital Foundation Gala had been his idea, a chance to give back, to show Chicago society that he wasn't just another trust fund baby coasting on his father's tech empire fortune. Now, standing in his custom-tailored tuxedo under the crystal chandelier where he'd planned to announce his engagement to Victoria's daughter Sarah, he felt like prey surrounded by vultures. "That's not true," Marcus managed to say, his voice barely audible over the growing murmur of the crowd. But Victoria was already pulling documents from the envelope, her face twisted with the kind of rage that comes from a mother protecting her child. "Bank transfers, Marcus. 50,000 here, 30,000 there. All traced back to your personal accounts." She waved the papers like evidence in a courtroom. "You've been siphoning donations meant for sick children to fund your little side projects." Sarah stepped forward from the crowd, her emerald green gown making her look like she was gliding across water. Marcus had fallen in love with those gray eyes 2 years ago at another charity event, but now they looked at him like he was a stranger. "Marcus," her voice cracked, "tell me this isn't real." The weight of 200 stares pressed down on Marcus like a physical force. He'd built his reputation carefully over the past 5 years, ever since taking over the charitable arm of Wellington Technologies after his father's heart attack. Every donation, every fundraiser, every late night spent reviewing grant applications. It had all been leading to this moment where he was supposed to prove he was more than just money. "I can explain," he started, but Victoria cut him off. "Explain what? How you bought that vintage Porsche last month. How you've been funding your art collection while children go without cancer treatments." She turned to address the crowd now, playing to her audience like the former theater actress she was. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the man who would have been my son-in-law. Thank God I discovered his true nature before he could destroy our family's reputation." Marcus's best friend Jake pushed through the crowd, his face pale. As Wellington Technologies CFO, Jake had access to all the company's financial records. "Marcus, man, you need to see these numbers. There are transfers I never authorized, accounts I don't recognize." "Not now, Jake," Marcus hissed, but it was too late. The damage was spreading like wildfire through the room. He could see board members of various charities whispering urgently into their phones, probably already planning emergency meetings to distance themselves from the scandal. Sarah's hand found his arm, her touch gentle despite everything. "Marcus, just tell me the truth. Did you take that money?" Looking into her eyes, Marcus realized he was staring into an abyss. If he told the truth, that he had no idea how those transfers had happened, that he'd been as shocked as anyone when his accountant had called that morning about irregular activity, would anyone believe him? Or would they see it as the desperate lie of a caught thief? "The truth is complicated," he said softly, and watched her face crumble. Sarah pulled her hand away as if he'd burned her. "Oh my God, you actually did it." That's when the unexpected guest made her entrance. The ballroom's massive doors swung open with a bang that echoed through the suddenly silent space. Every head turned toward the sound, expecting perhaps a late-arriving society figure or a dramatic tabloid photographer. Instead, they saw a woman in her 70s, walking with a silver-tipped cane and wearing a simple black dress that probably cost less than most people's appetizers that night. Marcus recognized her immediately, though he hadn't seen her in 2 years. Eleanor Hartwell, the founding director of the Children's Cancer Research Foundation, the same organization that Victoria claimed he'd been stealing from. Eleanor had been like a grandmother to him during his early days of charity work, teaching him about the real impact of giving, showing him how to look beyond the tax deductions and board positions to see the actual faces of the children they were helping. But Eleanor had disappeared from the charity circuit 18 months ago after being diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. The board had quietly asked her to step down, and Marcus had been too caught up in his own rising profile to stay in touch. The guilt had been eating at him ever since. "Eleanor," Marcus called out, his voice cracking with emotion he couldn't suppress. The elderly woman's eyes found his across the room, and she smiled, not the polite society smile that had been plastered on every other face that night, but the warm, genuine smile of someone who knew him before he was worth $50 million. "Hello, dear boy," Eleanor said, her voice carrying despite its frailness. She began walking toward the center of the room, her cane tapping against the marble in a rhythm that seemed to calm the chaos. "I apologize for being late. Traffic was terrible, and I had to take 3 buses to get here." Victoria's confident posture wavered for the first time. "Mrs. Hartwell, I'm not sure why you're here, but we were just destroying a good man's reputation based on falsified documents," Eleanor finished calmly. She reached into her small purse and pulled out a different manila envelope, this one worn around the edges. "I may be losing my memory, Marcus, but I haven't lost my connections at the bank." The room held its collective breath as Eleanor opened the envelope with shaking hands. "You see, when my condition started progressing, I made arrangements for someone to monitor all the major charity accounts in Chicago. Old habits, I suppose, and what I discovered 3 weeks ago would shock you all." She looked directly at Victoria, her faded blue eyes suddenly sharp as steel. "Those transfers you're so proud of exposing? They didn't come from Marcus's personal accounts. They came from a shell company registered under the name Ashford Holdings." The color drained from Victoria's face so quickly that Marcus thought she might faint. That's impossible. Is it?" Eleanor's voice grew stronger, as if the confrontation was energizing her. "Because according to my banker friend, those transfers were specifically timed to coincide with your daughter's wedding planning expenses. 50,000 for the venue deposit, 30,000 for the catering, 15,000 for the flowers." Sarah stepped back from her mother as if she'd been slapped. "Mom, what is she talking about?" Eleanor continued, her evidence as methodical as a prosecutor's closing argument. "Your mother has been embezzling from children's charities for months, Sarah. But she needed a fall guy, someone wealthy enough that the theft would seem believable, someone whose reputation would distract from any real investigation." The revelation hit the room like a physical wave. Guests started murmuring urgently. Phones appeared to capture the unfolding drama, and Marcus felt the crushing weight on his chest begin to lift for the first time all evening. But Victoria wasn't finished fighting. "You're a senile old woman," she snarled, dropping her society mask completely. "No one is going to believe your conspiracy theories over documented evidence." "Perhaps not," Eleanor agreed mildly. "But they might believe FBI agent Rebecca Chin." As if summoned by the mention of her name, a woman in a navy blue suit appeared at Eleanor's side. Marcus hadn't seen her enter. She must have slipped in during the chaos of Eleanor's entrance. Agent Chen's presence immediately shifted the energy in the room from society drama to federal investigation. "Victoria Ashford," Agent Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of her badge. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and theft from charitable organizations." The handcuffs came out as Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. "This is insane. Marcus is the thief. I have proof." "You have forged documents," Agent Chun corrected. "Documents that we've been tracking as part of a larger investigation into charity fraud in the Chicago area. Your shell company led us right to you." As federal agents appeared from seemingly nowhere to secure the scene, Marcus found himself standing next to Eleanor, watching the woman who had tried to destroy his life being led away in handcuffs. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd always felt like an outsider in this world of inherited wealth and social positioning. And now he'd been saved by an elderly woman who took public transportation to Gala's. "How did you know?" he asked Eleanor quietly. She patted his arm with her free hand, the other still gripping her cane. "Because I know you, Marcus. I've watched you cry over children you'd never met, seen you give up your own salary to make sure we could fund one more research project. Thieves don't do that. Sarah appeared at his other side, her face streaked with tears. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have believed in you. Looking at her, Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, vindication, anger, and underneath it all, a deep sadness. You believed your mother. That's natural. No, Sarah shook her head firmly. I chose to believe the worst about you instead of trusting what I knew in my heart. That's not natural. That's cowardice. Before Marcus could respond, Eleanor squeezed his arm tighter. There's something else you should know, dear boy, about why I really came tonight. Marcus turned to face her, noting how the excitement seemed to be fading from her eyes, replaced by something that looked like confusion. I've made arrangements, Eleanor continued, speaking faster now as if racing against her own mind. The foundation, my estate, it's all going to you. But you have to promise me something. Eleanor, you don't need to. Promise me, she insisted, her grip surprisingly strong. Promise me you'll keep fighting for them. The children. Even when people try to tear you down. Even when it feels hopeless. They need someone who understands that money is just a tool, not the goal. Marcus felt tears threatening for the first time all evening. I promise. Eleanor smiled and released his arm, then looked around the ballroom with wonder, as if seeing it for the first time. This is lovely. Are we here for a party? The heartbreak of watching her slip away was almost worse than everything Victoria had put him through. But Agent Chun appeared at Marcus's shoulder with unexpected gentleness. We'll make sure she gets home safely, she said quietly. And Mr. Wellington? You should know that your cooperation with our investigation helped us build the case against Mrs. Ashford. You're going to be instrumental in recovering funds for at least 6 different children's charities. As the evening wound down and the crowd gradually dispersed, some disappointed at missing their planned entertainment, others energized by witnessing real drama, Marcus found himself alone with Sarah on the ballroom's balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. Where do we go from here? Sarah asked, her voice small in the night air. Marcus considered the question, watching the city lights blur through the fog rolling in from Lake Michigan. 3 days ago, he'd thought he had his whole future mapped out. Marriage to Sarah, a merger of 2 prominent families, continued success in the charity world built on his growing reputation. Now all of that felt as insubstantial as the mist below them. I honestly don't know, he admitted. Your mother tried to destroy everything I've built. Even with the truth coming out, there will always be people who remember the accusation more than the vindication. Sarah moved closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume mixing with the night air. So you rebuild. We rebuild. We. Marcus looked at her, surprised by the hope in her voice. If you'll have me. I know I failed you tonight, but I want to earn back your trust. I want to help you continue Eleanor's work, help you prove that there are still people in this world who care more about doing good than looking good. Marcus felt something inside him shift, not quite forgiveness, but the possibility of it. It won't be easy. The foundation work, Eleanor's right that it's often thankless. Long hours, difficult decisions, heartbreaking losses. But also, Sarah finished, the chance to save lives. To give children futures they wouldn't have otherwise. I've been watching from the sidelines for 2 years, Marcus. I want to be part of something that matters. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the fog roll across the lake. Then Sarah asked the question that had been hanging between them all evening. What made you stay in charity work? Really stay. You could have just written checks and attended galas like everyone else. Marcus thought about Eleanor's fading memory, about the children whose names he kept in a notebook by his desk, about the phone calls from grateful parents that he'd never told anyone about. Because someone has to care more than just writing checks. And I'd rather fail trying to make a real difference than succeed at just playing the part. Then let's fail together, Sarah said. And for the first time that night, Marcus smiled. But as they headed back inside, Marcus caught sight of a figure watching them from across the street. A man in an expensive coat, who'd been taking pictures during the confrontation with Victoria. The man quickly disappeared into the shadows when he noticed Marcus looking, leaving behind only questions. Eleanor had saved his reputation and handed him a foundation to run. Sarah wanted to rebuild their relationship on something more meaningful than social expectations, and Victoria's arrest had cleared his name. But something in the way that photographer had been watching suggested that Marcus's troubles weren't completely over. Some secrets, Marcus was beginning to understand, had roots that ran deeper than one woman's greed and desperation. And some victories came with prices that weren't apparent until much later. As he and Sarah walked back into the ballroom, Marcus made a mental note to call Agent Chun in the morning. Because if tonight had taught him anything, it was that the people who want to destroy you don't always work alone. And sometimes, the real mystery isn't who betrayed you. It's who's been pulling the strings from the shadows all along.